Sophie Cunningham gets elbowed in the face. Look at this.
Damn. They call
Sophie Cunningham gets elbowed in the face, and somehow this is a foul on Sophie Cunningham. Yeah, I shit you not. Sophie Cunningham gets elbowed in the face, and they somehow call this a foul on Sophie Cunningham. The worst part is, these dummies, these stooge referees, reviewed this play too, and still came to the conclusion that the foul is on Sophie Cunningham. You can't make this up.
What happens when an athlete speaks her mind, then returns to the floor and suddenly cannot seem to buy a whistle? That was the question spreading among fans after Sophie Cunningham absorbed a forceful elbow that had viewers studying the replay instead of paying attention to the score. Was this merely another example of the physical style that defines WNBA basketball? Or had Cunningham's outspoken position on women competing in women's sports placed an even larger target on her? The argument intensified almost immediately, and the footage quickly divided everyone watching into opposing camps.
So we have Cheryl Reeve opening it up about this Sophie Cunningham situation. If you guys don't know, this thing has been really hitting the fan. Now, Cheryl Reeve made some comments about Sophie Cunningham yesterday in her pre-press conference, and today she followed it up with speaking to Sophie before the game. Now, there was a photo that has been floating around online of these two talking before the game. Let me get it pulled up for you guys. Now, we all know that Sophie Cunningham has found herself in a wormhole, man. She got these rallies being led.
For a league that repeatedly promotes toughness, intensity, and high-level competition, this particular sequence caused plenty of viewers to wonder why that standard appeared to vanish at the exact moment it mattered. Cunningham has established herself as a fearless and physical competitor who protects her teammates, embraces confrontation, and refuses to retreat when controversy comes her way.
The Indiana Fever, from a public relations standpoint, they cannot get out of their own way. If they did not believe when they dropped this injury report and Sophie Cunningham randomly shows up right after she has to put out a statement in what looks like a, oh crap, I've done gotten my arm twisted, my elbow twisted, by the Indiana Fever leadership. And
look, Sophie would probably reject the idea herself. Still, a growing number of fans feel the way she is treated has recently shifted, and this latest episode only added more fuel to that belief. During the possession, Cunningham took an unmistakable elbow that instantly grabbed the attention of nearly everyone watching. The impact looked clear enough for broadcasters to replay the sequence from several different angles, and every new view seemed to produce the exact same response from the audience.
Comments by Indiana Fever's Sophie Cunningham sparked a pregame clash between fans outside the Moda Center tonight. Fox 12's Michaela Armstrong spoke to protesters about the bigger debate they say her comments have reignited.
And this is what people be talking about, man. The manufactured MVP, bro. When you actually watch these games and not just look at the box score or just look at, you know, the highlights, you get the and being like, oh yeah, these referees, this company, like we see something ain't right. It was a
Surely the referees would catch it after another look. Surely this would finally be the moment when the whistle came and the contact was addressed. Yet nothing followed. There was no foul, no reversal, and no protection for Cunningham after she absorbed the blow. That decision immediately pulled attention away from the actual contest and redirected the entire discussion toward the quality and consistency of the officiating.
We could have been a heated exchange that took place between these two. Now, Cheryl Reeve did have on a very intimidating t-shirt that we're not even going to dive into because I'm really tired of talking about this whole situation at this point. Like, I feel where Sophie was coming from. I just never thought in a million years this thing could just boil over the way it has, and I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. Now, with that being said, Cheryl Reeve spoke to the media, and Olivia Miles did too, and Olivia Miles is straight bragging about beating Kayla Clark, which is...
Viewers were not arguing over whether contact took place because the video made that part extremely difficult to deny. The real argument centered on a much bigger question. How could the officials examine the play, see the same angles available to everyone else, and still decide that the action did not warrant a foul? That question spread rapidly online, and it became far more explosive because of everything that had surrounded Cunningham in recent weeks. Her public remarks regarding women participating in women's sports had already turned her into one of the league's most discussed personalities. Some people applauded her for expressing an opinion they believed other athletes were too hesitant to voice, while others insisted her statements deserved criticism and resistance. No matter which position someone supported, one reality was obvious. Sophie Cunningham had become a major lightning rod throughout the WNBA. That is precisely why this particular sequence received so much attention. In the minds of many fans, the issue had expanded beyond a single missed call. People started questioning whether officials were now handling Cunningham differently because of the attention and controversy attached to her name. Whether that conclusion is reasonable or not, the perception becomes stronger whenever another borderline decision appears to work against her. Naturally, officiating errors occur throughout every professional sport. Referees are imperfect, basketball unfolds at tremendous speed, and missed whistles will always be part of the game. The frustration becomes much deeper, however, when the contact still appears undeniable after several slow-motion angles and the original ruling remains untouched. That is the point where ordinary disappointment can transform into distrust, and distrust creates narratives powerful enough to consume the entire game.
Coach, there was an anti-trans rally before the game, inspired by a WNBA player. As a member of the LGBTQ plus community and in your workplace, what was your reaction knowing that this was happening right outside of your door?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Seattle and this organization and Climate Pledge, like, we always want to be an area where people feel welcome coming into this building. I think we've always done a really good job with that. So I know our organization was, you know, working closely with Climate Pledge and with security to just make sure that, you know, everybody feels safe and included and welcome when they walk.
Every viewer will reach a different conclusion about whether this was nothing more than another officiating mistake or simply terrible timing. Even so, one reality cannot be dismissed. Any disputed call involving Sophie Cunningham now carries additional significance because of the controversy that has developed away from the court. If these incidents continue accumulating, the WNBA could find itself answering more questions about referees than promoting the basketball happening in front of its growing audience. The unusual part is that the discussion did not end with one questionable elbow against Cunningham. Instead, that moment ignited a far wider argument because many supporters believe the entire environment around her has changed since she publicly entered the debate involving women's sports. People can support her position, reject it completely, or fall somewhere between those extremes, but the reaction throughout the league and beyond it has become impossible to overlook. The replayed sequence only intensified that tension. Cunningham takes a strong elbow, the officials appear to have a direct line of sight, the footage is examined, and the possession still ends without a foul being assessed. That was the moment social media began repeating one central question. When referees are allowed to slow the action down and review the collision from numerous angles, how can the final outcome still be no whistle at all? To many viewers, the decision did not resemble an isolated oversight. Instead, it looked like the latest installment in what they increasingly describe as a developing pattern.
Last night we had the Seattle Storm, let me get it right, Seattle Storm's co-owner, Celeste Keaton, berate two young teenage girls who were wearing XXXY shirts with a sign that said, "Thank you, Sophie Cunningham, for speaking up for girls." Here's the two girls right here. They're supporting Sophie Cunningham after she made the remark saying that basically men don't belong, or trans women who were men don't belong in women's sports.
And they don't.
She came over, verbally assaulted them, called them, saying the WNBA has suspended her 5 games and fined her. She won't be able to sit on courtside for 5 games.
And that is
Exactly why has this argument grown far beyond the boundaries of one basketball game? Rather than analyzing strategy and performance, the WNBA has again become overwhelmed by disputes involving Sophie Cunningham, Caitlin Clark, Indiana Fever supporters, members of the media, and the widening political division attached to nearly every major league headline. One controversy seems to disappear only moments before a replacement arrives to dominate the conversation. This particular situation became even more complicated when a Seattle reporter stated that online threats allegedly made by Fever fans had left her uncomfortable attending Indiana games. She explained that she had begun turning her media credential around so spectators inside the building would not immediately identify her. The statement produced an instant split among basketball followers. Many argued that journalists should never face threats because of their reporting, opinions, or the teams and athletes they cover. The same reporter also drew attention to a rally planned outside Seattle's Climate Pledge Arena in support of Cunningham after the backlash generated by her comments on women's sports. That announcement revived another emotionally intense argument. Supporters described the gathering as a peaceful demonstration of solidarity, while opponents believed it represented political implications extending well beyond basketball.
Exactly. And I don't want to take too much of this clip, but that's exactly what I saw too much of today. Instead of setting Caitlin Clark a screen, AB goes and gets the ball. Two things can be true right here. One thing that could be true, Stephanie White This is the offense that Stephanie White, this is what gets Stephanie White hot and bothered, watching AB be the hub. One thing can be true. The second thing that's true, AB, use some common sense. You have basketball IQ, right? I don't want to insult you and say you don't have you have basketball IQ? Then you should know better. Get out the way or set a screen. Those are your two options. Get out the way or set a screen so Caitlin Clark can set you up for an
She finished the play near the rim, but once again, what occurred on the basketball court quickly became a secondary concern. The spotlight shifted toward rallies, online statements, social media conflicts, and opposing interpretations of what Cunningham now symbolizes. To one section of the audience, she represents an athlete prepared to express what others are unwilling to say openly. To another section, her statements crossed a boundary they believe public figures should respect. Wherever someone falls in that dispute, one conclusion is difficult to challenge. Sophie Cunningham has become one of the WNBA's most divisive and closely watched figures. As the controversy grew, another online post claimed Storm supporters were contacting the franchise regarding the scheduled rally and pointing toward Seattle's established support for the transgender community. The Seattle Storm later issued a message of sympathy following a devastating shooting near Seattle Center that killed several people and left others injured. Suddenly, the sports arguments filling timelines earlier that day were overtaken by a genuine tragedy affecting the surrounding community. At least briefly, attention moved away from online conflict and returned to an event with consequences far greater than any basketball dispute. The Indiana Fever and Stephanie White
fight after she shit on the fans yesterday. You know, by the way, in politics, sometimes it can help just to be likable. Stephanie White's not very likable. That's part of her problem, is she does not come across as very likable. And yeah, Stephanie White, the consumers, you do have to answer to them because they can turn the TV off and they quit buying tickets. Again, Indiana has had more empty seats. Shockingly, there were empty seats
during a matchup involving Angel Reese. But once that sequence faded from attention, focus quickly returned to the league, and yet another controversy surfaced. That leads directly back to the central issue behind this entire conversation. For many supporters, the most pressing question is no longer whether Cunningham's statements were provocative. They are asking whether the reaction to those statements has started influencing what happens during games. When athletes surrounded by controversy repeatedly become involved in disputed officiating decisions, viewers naturally begin linking those moments together, even when the connections may not be supported by direct evidence. Until the league rebuilds trust in both its refereeing standards and its ability to explain major decisions, the volume of those accusations will only continue rising. The timing makes the situation even more difficult to dismiss, because none of this is unfolding during an unnoticed portion of the schedule. Every angle is now slowed down, enlarged, debated, and examined frame by frame across social platforms, television programs, podcasts, and YouTube channels. Millions of viewers are attempting to determine whether they saw a routine human mistake or evidence of a deeper concern. That is the primary reason the elbow involving Sophie Cunningham attracted such enormous scrutiny.
Spicy. It got spicy before the game even started. It got spicy before the game even started. This is wild, man. Cheryl Reeve running down, pressing Sophie Cunningham about her stance on this whole trans situation. You had the ABC telecast or ESPN, whoever it was, bragging about the t-shirt that head coach of the Minnesota Lynx, Cheryl Reeve, chose to wear. It was like a trans lives, trans kids matter, or something like that. This whole thing has blown up, grown legs of its own.
Had the officials immediately calling a foul likely would have ended the controversy before it gained any momentum. Supporters might have complained briefly, both teams would have continued playing, and the audience would probably have returned its attention to the final result. Instead, viewers saw the replay, recognized the apparent contact, and then watched the officials allow the game to continue without intervention. That combination transformed the entire discussion. Within moments, fans connected the no call to every other controversy Cunningham had encountered during the previous several weeks. Her comments concerning women's sports had already placed her in the middle of one of the most heated and emotional disagreements in the sporting world. One group praised those remarks, while another responded with intense condemnation. That background is exactly what appears to be shaping the response here. The most difficult issue is that perception can become almost as influential as objective reality, particularly in professional athletics, where credibility and fairness influence how every major ruling is received. Most fans recognize that officials are human and that incorrect decisions are unavoidable at every level of basketball. The larger danger emerges when a significant portion of the audience stops interpreting those mistakes as normal human error and begins treating them as proof of a wider problem.
The officiating's awful and way too physical. Way too physical. The NBA allows physicality in the finals when the season's at the very end. But they want to keep their players healthy for the regular season and early rounds of the playoffs. Why hurt your content? Adam Silver in the league now. You get to the finals, that's a man's game. Wemby, good luck. WNBA regular season is officiated like UFC. There's no eye gouging, but almost everything else. So, and she didn't have great communications with players, according to players.
Once confidence begins breaking down, every uncertain whistle, every disputed no call, and every slow-motion replay from several camera positions becomes another alleged example reinforcing a narrative that already exists. Whether the interpretation is ultimately accurate can become almost irrelevant because a public belief travels through social media much faster than any league statement or official clarification. That is the exact difficulty the WNBA has confronted throughout much of the current season. Instead of keeping attention centered on remarkable performances, emerging stars, competitive playoff battles, and attendance records, the league continues being dragged into disagreements over officiating, policy decisions, media framing, and the increasingly strained relationship among athletes, journalists, and highly invested fan communities. For a league experiencing historic growth and receiving more national attention than ever, that creates an extremely delicate challenge, because publicity does not automatically benefit the product simply because people are talking. Unfortunately, once controversies like these build momentum, they almost never remain limited to what happened on the hardwood. They expand into arguments about league executives, news coverage, the treatment of particular players, and wider cultural conflicts that extend far beyond 40 minutes on the court.
Cheryl Reeve and Sophie Cunningham obviously have vastly different stances on this entire trans, men being able to play in women's sports. I'm just gonna call it what it is, okay? Sophie's standing on her side. Cheryl Reeves is on the side of let them play, and it looks like Cheryl Reeves wanted to run down on Sophie Cunningham pre-game and press her about her stand.
That is exactly what has occurred around Sophie Cunningham. Demonstrates that evolution. A conversation that initially focused on her public remarks slowly expanded into arguments involving referees, media coverage, supporter behavior, league executives, and the broader cultural questions that continue separating public opinion. After that transformation took place, almost every development connected to Cunningham started being judged through an existing storyline instead of being considered independently. When she receives an especially physical blow during a game, some viewers immediately claim opponents are targeting her without consequence. When referees decline to call contact involving her, those same supporters interpret the decision as further proof of their suspicions. The largest obstacle facing the league is that this cycle appears unlikely to disappear in the near future. Should another disputed no call involving Cunningham happen next week, a large number of fans will immediately compare it with previous examples and insist that the incidents now form a recognizable pattern.
Since I've been in the league, you've heard the constant concerns about officiating, and it has now reached levels of inconsistency that plague our sport and undermine the integrity in which it operates. Year after year, the only thing that remains consistent is the lack of accountability from our leaders. At Unrivaled this past February, I sat across from Cathy and asked how she planned to address the officiating issues in our league. Her response was, well, only the losers complain about the refs. I also asked how she planned to fix the fact that players like Caitlin, Angel, and Paige, who are clearly driving massive revenue for the league, are making so little for their first 4 years. Her response was, Caitlin should be grateful she makes $16 million off the court.
Because similarly, the next highly physical sequence involving Caitlin Clark will almost certainly be connected to the wider concerns supporters already express about uneven officiating. Every fresh dispute is added to what came before it, creating a growing archive of moments that both defenders and critics use to strengthen the positions they already hold. Whether those judgments are reasonable toward the referees is a different debate entirely, but the central problem can no longer be dismissed. The confidence of the audience is currently being challenged in ways the WNBA probably did not expect as its visibility expanded. Unless upcoming games show noticeably stronger consistency, or league officials begin offering clearer and more persuasive explanations for the most disputed rulings, these controversies will remain central to the public conversation long after the final buzzer and long after the basketball itself has been played.